Hello everyone, welcome back to Keep Productive YouTube channel. It's Francesco. Today I'm very lucky to be joined for a conversation about value-based productivity with Chris Dancy, who is regarded as the most connected human on the planet. He is also pretty much the whiz on Airtable, a big fan himself. And we also have Mike Vardy, who is the founder of Productivityist, and he works very hard in teaching folks about their time blocking technique and many different productivity techniques. So great to have you all guys in one Zoom call. It's gonna be fun.
Thank you.
It's gonna be great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, from my perspective, like I was saying to you guys, I'm here to learn. So I'm just I'm going to be learning along today. So I'll be able to sort of pose my opinion as it happens, I guess, if I have one. But Chris, you're going to start out with sort of framing the situation. So maybe we'll jump over to yourself.
Cool. Thank you, Francesco. So I literally made some slides, and I'll try to keep this really brief. But my goal here is to really start to focus on basically the problem with productivity. I mean, people always kind of allude to it. I'm a faithful watcher of all of Francesco's videos, and so many of his guests talk about it. But I think there's a bigger systemic problem going on when we speak about productivity. And I had a chance to speak with Mike before this call, and I found out that he is a time wizard. I think he's a time witch, but that's a whole nother story. And it really allowed me to kind of make my points real salient. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second. So when I think about productivity and I think about the reframing of productivity, it's really about, are there problems or challenges with productivity? And when my own productivity journey is pretty well documented, I mean, literally I've been in magazines and a show on Netflix and the whole bit. About 12 years ago, I took every system in my life, whether it be what I did for work or how I slept or what was going on in my house, and systematized it in a way to collect it, and Michael liked this, in a calendar. And this allowed me to kind of automate what we would now call time blocking, but it also allowed me to see kind of systemic problems, like what was I spending my time doing, because I kind of color coded it, so it'd be pretty straightforward. And this led me to this profound awakening that we don't know how to measure what we care about, so we care about what we measure. And this became the root of how I started to view productivity as I moved forward. And it led me to what I call the productivity problem. See, the problem with productivity is, while it's personally empowering, I think it can have disastrous outcomes on our group and mutual well-being. And it's because it has this very short time focus. For many people, productivity can be time consuming, just setting up systems and thinking about them. It can be expensive. It can be ultimately ineffective, because what were you optimizing for? And I hate to say it, but I'm going to finally say it out loud. Productivity is pretty selfish, because I get a lot of emails and requests and all sorts of things from other people where I'm forced to use their systems and they're not really thinking about me. So moving forward, I want to start to think about, well, how did this happen? If we go back to like the early 90s, productivity came out of this world where PCs and devices really drove things, and how we got our news came from tech magazines. We jump into the 2000s, and all of a sudden you get more books telling you, getting things done, and we have new tools that are living in the cloud. And that was kind of this work-life balance sprawl started happening. By the early 2010s, the appification of productivity happened, and it was about saving everything and organizing and optimizing. And then, get up to the last part of the last decade, and then we kind of get into this idea of deep work and, all the wonderful productivity lists and kind of the cult of productivity figureheads. And then finally you get to where we are today, and you've got this kind of hyper focus of productivity. Channels like Keep Productive are amazing because they're hyper focused on kind of one thing. Atomic Habits is really great because it's about getting this done. But I believe that hyper focus is actually an exploitation of our values. And I want to make the case that if we were to broaden and allow everyone to the table for productivity, that we'd actually find this. Because productivity journeys actually mirror everyone's journey when it comes to their relationship with time. Most people start off with productivity. They get into like time tracking, but then somewhere around, year two of productivity, they'll start thinking about their health. And then somewhere after that, they'll get burned out and start thinking, well, how do I balance this? Or maybe like Francesco, they'll have a baby. Maybe sometime after that, they'll actually say, I really care about like the world around me. And they'll get like kind of into nature and weather and all those other kinds of things. And then finally they end up like every rich Silicon Valley tycoon into this kind of transcendent, value. And to me, again, I think it's the short-term focus is at the root of productivity and how it should. move forward. But it's not just productivity. All the tools in Silicon Valley now have gone from personal and need, so where we're developing applications to things at the highest part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to today, you'll notice a lot of the tools that are being focused are really focusing by flipping that upside down. I think in so many ways, Notion, Airtable, and these other tools that are fulfilling the need of bringing groups of people together, not for personal productivity, but group productivity, are really inspiring us. And then finally, I just want to end with this. You can't save time. Right? There's this idea that if you were productive enough, you could save time. It's just impossible to save time, right? We still need to start to like getting into what our goals are and what mode we're in. We're either thinking, being, doing, planning, living, or thriving. Like those are the areas you're doing. And each of those goals have a productivity function to them. But the thing we sometimes miss is they also have a time. Like thinking is happening all the time. What you're doing every day is daily, and that's kind of just being. And we need to start to align those things. So my kind of message here is don't save time, spend it right the first time. So how can you do this? And what I want to frame this talk about, it's really about looking at what tools you use and how you use them, because I think we can judge each other not by our actions, but by the tools we use. And then more importantly, it's about opening up and starting to really deconstruct all the things that kind of make us up who we are and what we do and what we value. So hopefully I did that quick enough.
That was really impressive.
That's going to be a rewind for a lot of people. They're like, okay, let me go back and see what that was. There's a lot there, but it was great. It was great. That
was really good.
Thank you.
I think for like my first impressions of that is more like for say like people who aren't us three, who are say out of the productivity sector, how would you say the balance is? Do you think it's like they need to look at those tools you mentioned at the end, implement them, and then see how they're using their time? And then I guess what would be the actions for those people? Would it just be like to, I guess, like reconfigure their setup or reconfigure the way they're thinking about it?
Again, I had a better call to action at the end, but I was trying to get done in 3 minutes or less. I'll have to go back and watch the video and see if I got it even close. No, but I think reconfiguring our thinking is the most important thing. I mean, so many young people today, and not young people, are dealing with this existential dread about the world. They're dealing with the kind of the unresolved conflict of, well, I did everything right and I'm still poor. And I did everything right and I'm still lonely. And I worked hard at work and I'm still unemployed. Yeah. And I think productivity kind of creates this lens that if you just optimize enough, it would work out. Optimize my baby, optimize some of those. And at the end of the day, you need to optimize your thinking, right? And there's no tool for that. No. So that's where I'm with it.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that some people get so caught up in the tracking that they forget why they're tracking in the first place. So they'll do things like, I mean, I'll give an example. I ditched my Apple Watch not too long ago and replaced it with this tiny, which I think, Chris, was I wearing this when we chatted last? I think I was wearing this watch. Basically, it's
I took a screenshot.
The idea is that I felt that, and again, this is personal, and I think that's the other thing too, but the idea is that the Apple Watch, no matter how many times, like when I do an update or something like that, it would reconfigure the way that the device wants you to do it, right? The way that, so I finally decided, where do I want to invest my time? Do I want to invest in consistently, fixing this thing when it breaks? Or do I want to let it go and go, you know what? I don't, because really I thought about what was I using my Apple Watch for? I was using it to capture things on the go. I was using it to track my activity throughout the day. And that was basically it. And then every other time it was interrupting me or disrupting me. So I thought, well, if I just know that I'm going to be active enough every single day, and I set that up like a themed time block, like a horizontal theme, eating my own dog food and putting that in my calendar. And then in terms of drafts, well, you know what? I've got notebooks. I've got I can put a Baron Fig notebook in my pocket and bring it with me everywhere I go. I've eliminated the larger piece of technology that I don't really need. And I can do that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever talked about this, but like the idea of the Japanese using blue zones of happiness and ikigai, like they live long and healthy because they move every day. They're not doing like high intensity 7-minute exercises. They're just going for walks and lifting things. And I'm like, what if I just did that instead and maintained a healthy, do I need this watch? The answer is no.
Yeah. So the problem with, and I know Dan Buettner well, and with blue zones. The problem is if you can afford to live in some of the places where blue zones are popular, you probably have too much money.
Right. Yeah,
So
I think the idea behind that is what I'm talking about, not necessarily the constructs with them. But I think the other thing is that people get, and this is what I love about what you're saying, Chris, is that the idea of group productivity and the idea that people are like, they're getting, is that the personal stuff gets left behind, which is selfish, because I can tell you right now that if, when you're talking about values, like, why are we trying to be productive in the first place? If that's like be productive in the first place, it's to have the freedom to do more of the things we really want to do, like spend time with your baby and enjoy life with your family and stuff.
But see, you just fell into the first trap, saving time. You can't save time. You can only spend it right.
But what I'm saying is that you're not saving time to do that. You're figuring out where that stuff should go and then putting it first. That's what I mean. Most people have it the other way around.
I'll buy that.
For somebody like watching, there may be like hovering over a window about to chuck everything out the window, like their computer, their mobile. Like, I guess, like, what would it just be like looking at all of the things you use and being able to reevaluate how you use them? Or is it more of the case of, do I truly need this, and does this truly make a impact on time? I'm trying to just get my head around it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
So let's just break it down really easy, right? So one of the themes that we've mentioned throughout today's call are tools. And I mean, we're a tool-centered world. Well, we're also a tool-centered species, right? You know, Microsoft Word doesn't hold any more power over us than fire. But they both are equally as deadly depending on who's writing or using the tool. And where I think we need to think about is, are we fundamentally really ready to accept the responsibility that tools shape who we are? So let's take, for example, you use Todoist for everything, right? A lot of people do. Todoist literally, and their feature set shapes what you are allowed to value. It's by its very nature, no shade. Right? No shade. Right? So until we can come to that realization, like the tools we use are shaping who we are. I think that's the first step, is we have to mutually agree that the tools we use shape our ability to execute and who we become. I think the second step is really then, it's as easy as saying, well, then what do you care about? And then making sure the tool reflects that.
See, that's the thing too, is like focus on the app within first, right? Like figure out, I mean, what did Thoreau say? Men have become the tools of their tools, right? Like, and I know that there's going to be some people say, yeah, but that was back then, and now we have way more tools and technology and the speed and all that stuff. It's like, listen, you can go into Todoist, and if you use it the way it's designed out of the box, then that's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter who, because it's designed with a larger scale in mind, right? It's like, again, it's like when you get your device, it says, this is what we want, right? But if you, like, I was thinking about this the other day in terms of Todoist. I'm like, what if you used the labels as projects and you use the projects as something else? Because then you could because one of the pitfalls of Todoist is you can't have a task in multiple projects, right? You can't. It doesn't allow you to do that. But what if the labels were projects? Then you could have a task in multiple. And people are like, no, but that's not the way that, no, labels, it's a label. A label is a label is a label. I'm like, is it? Like, is it? Like, a tool should allow you to shape it the way that you need it to work for you, but you need to step back, slow down for a second and go, okay, what do I need to get out of this? Not what does this tool allow me to do? Because that's one of the biggest traps. It's like, well, this tool will allow me to get things done faster. I won't lose track of things. Hey, but what are the things, and why speed? I mean, productivity at its core to me is not, and I mean, I've had this discussion a lot of times. It's not efficiency and effectiveness. It's not, it's intention and attention. What's your intention? How are you going to pay attention to it? That's what I've said for years. And back to Chris's point about, like, when you see the getting things done and the progression, getting things done, we've heard about polishing the runway, right? Like, no one gets to that horizon. No one. Very few people get to that, like, I'm thinking at the 40,000 feet level. They're all sitting there. That's why they call it polishing the runway. They never get to that. And the tools largely keep you at that level unless you sit back and go, okay, what do I really want? What do I really want? And how am I going to spend the time that I have, which again, it moves whether we want it to or not, which is why I don't really like the term time management. That's the thing. And so I've thought about that with you. And actually, that's the fun thing is that as someone who's spent time in apps, we all have, I'm like, should I go into Todoist and just see what it would look like if there's, but again, do I want to spend my time doing that? If I'm doing that surely out of curiosity, that's great. But will it ultimately do what I want it to do? So you have to, honestly, in a lot of cases when it comes to productivity, and this sounds paradoxical, is you have to slow down. So, and most people don't equate productivity with that. They're like, oh, it's good, it's speed. It's speed. No. Doing things fast and wrong means you're that much further away from where you want to be. Slowing down and going, okay. And that's why when I've had conversations, I think Chris and I talked about this. When I do talks and I say, hey, let's just not do anything for a minute. Now, in the virtual world, I'm doing it for 30 seconds because it's really awkward. But for a minute, people will sit and I'm like, don't do anything. And at about the 35-second marks in a live setting, I will shift my body and they're like, oh, it must be a minute now. No, not even close. We're only halfway there. Most people don't even understand how long a minute actually is. And so if you slow down for 30 seconds and just go, okay, let me catch my breath, let me catch my bearings and figure out where I want me and my time to go, my attention, where do I want that to go? Then you're going to be able to make better decisions, which ultimately, if you want to bring it down to the simplest of terms, makes you more productive in so many areas of your life, not just work.
Yeah, I think I think the last 2 years have been pretty crazy with apps like Roam and Notion, sort of because it's almost become like a hobby now to go inside of apps and make them look really, really attractive. And you can get carried away. I definitely did with Notion at the start, but now I'm just
I remember that, Francesco. I remember that one.
The phase.
But I think that's the evolution too. I mean, we've spent so much time in the productivity space that we've spent time in that path. The thing is, I mean, again, and I watched the timeline that Chris mentioned. I'm like, yep, I was in that. Oh yeah, I remember that timeline. And it's true. Every element of that timeline is absolutely true. Right. Yeah. You see, and we've become very app centric, and that's probably part of the problem. Not probably, it is when an app goes away, like Astrid, like Wunderlist, they're like, what do we do now? I'm like, well, but framework first. If then you could easily, there shouldn't be oh no, what am I going to do? It's, I move my stuff from here to here in a seamless fashion, which is why paper's coming back, honestly. But the renaissance of paper is because listen, I can trust paper. I can trust it. It's not going. The only thing that's going to change about paper is me, right? Yeah. So the renaissance of paper is largely attributed, I think, to okay, there's too much. Let me grab my pen and paper and write stuff down and have focus on that. So it might be one of the benefits of the hyper focus area that Chris is talking about. But again, I think a lot of times we look at our to-do list, we look at what we're going to try to set out to do in a day, and we have unrealistic expectations of what we can do because the speed of the way things are moving, we feel like we can keep up with that speed and we just can't. We can't. So why try? Instead, figure out what the right thing to do is. Look at your values, like Chris is talking about. What do I value? And not just in work either. I think a lot of people get caught up in and then by the time they get home, they're like, well, I'm spent. Let me watch Netflix. Let me do this thing, which is why I like time theming. Theming your time in the day is I get home on a today is my looking day. When I'm done work, I'm like, okay, well, today's my looking day. At least I can point myself in the right direction as opposed to just wildly. But the great thing is I also have the option to ignore that and just do whatever the hell I want right in that moment. That's why time crafting went in the direction that it did, because I think there's so much caught up in just the doing that we don't understand what all the doing is about.
Yeah.
Francesco, can I just add a little something here?
Yeah,
there's a couple themes I've heard also that make me really uncomfortable. One of them is this objectification of technology. This somehow I'm better than you because I use a paper notebook. I'm somehow more superior than you because I'm using a real watch. And I think what we keep running into these dead ends and these flip-flopping methodologies and frameworks because of dualism. I mean, at its very nature, one of the fastest processes for the human mind to do is to judge something good or bad. And I think we have to be very careful. I know Mike, and I know Mike is not saying these things to elevate himself, but we all know someone who's looked at us and said, can you please put your phone down and pay attention to me? Mm-hmm. And I often think that people who need that level of attention have the attention problem.
Yeah.
They need it. And that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is I love, and I've come to embrace the people who become what I call, notion porn addicts. So basically their notion becomes this personified version of their best life. And I think today, I don't want to shame people who are doing that, but I do think it's time to say, are you ready to make that pretty picture actionable?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think, and let me clarify, like tools are fine. Like hell, I've got tons of apps. I mean, I've used Notion. I use Romance.
He does.
I do. I have lots of apps.
He does.
And I came from the place, Cult of Mac, the next web. That's what I wrote about when I first started. But I think what I've seen in my decade plus of studying productivity is that what to Chris's point is that they get into the app and they go, okay, here's the app. I've got it in the app. It's going to happen. The app is going to. That's what it is. And you need triggers. You need something else that's gonna, and those triggers shouldn't be necessarily, they can be technology to trigger you. Absolutely they can. It's a personal choice. And that's why I've always said productivity is personal. Once that happens, so when you get like a note, when you start setting up Notion or Roam or whatever, I think it's important to figure out, and that's what Keep Productive does, is, hey, here's how you can use it. But then ultimately it should be now you've got the bedrock, you've got the fundamentals. Now you go ahead and make it yours. That's what should happen.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point. I'm sorry, Francesco. That's literally what you've done, right? Yeah. And people ever wonder, like, why is Francesco so successful? And I've said this to you a million times. You help people explore what's important to them.
Yeah.
That cannot be understated in a time where meaning has lost so much value.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like striking. Like, I spent a lot of time in the early days, like trying to. I started with like productivity systems, but then I sort of moved to like making the tool more of a shelf, a product on the shelf, sort of, so that you could present the information and people can go away with it. But I agree with you both in what you're saying about, and I can definitely see it in my own life, about the whole, like, the beautification of a tool, but also, like, do you need that tool so much? I like this morning I had a bit of a moment like this, and it was weird that I had this moment before this call. I was watching like a National Geographic about the sun, and it was called the Carrington event. That was back in like the mid 1800s or 1900s. I don't know which way around it is. And basically, like the entire planet got like the electric cut out. And obviously in those days wouldn't have meant much, maybe a couple of, setbacks, but now obviously that would mean pretty much anything, everything would be off. And it did get me thinking, even when I was just like walking outside in the morning, and I was just like, actually that would be pretty dramatic with what today's society's like. But would it be would it be the, like, not the end for some people, but would it mean so much to some people that they wouldn't be able to, say, live without the technology? And it definitely got me thinking. But I think there's definitely this notion of of tools and and people sort of overindulging in them. But it's what I think.
No, I mean, we've ended up with Caligula for productivity. Yeah. It's an
Well, and I mean, I think it's too, that these are power tools too, right? Like at the end of the day, I mean, certain tools, absolutely. If things went like when Slack goes down for 2 hours this week, people are like, oh no, but that there's a fundamental need for that right now, especially considering that the era that we're in, there's a lot of remote work going on, but there might be another tool. Like that's the thing. It's what's the purpose of the tool? Oh, we can't use Slack. Okay, well there's Twist or there's this or like there are, but if like a tool like Todoist goes down, or goes away. It's like, okay, your drill is gone, but you still got a screwdriver, right? Like, so you may not be able to do things as quickly, but you could certainly, and we do this all. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever come across it, like, oh man, I need a hammer, but I don't have one. Oh, look, here's a brick or something like that. You could use as a hammer. It's not going to do it as effectively, but your hope, especially with the skill, like if you've used a hammer before, like, okay, if I hit it this way, then it should go in, regardless of what blunt object I use, as long as humans have been great at doing that, right? Yeah. So I think that if a tool is to go away, and we've seen it, or gets, kind of co-opted like Wunderlist did by Microsoft, and they took a bunch of stuff out, then people are forced with a choice. What do I use now? Maybe and in some cases, maybe they don't have a choice. That's, I think, one of the other problems is that.
So Francesco, sorry, I was just going to say, I just want, just before I forget, Caligula was a movie about Roman debauchery.
Oh, okay.
I was hoping you would link to it in the show note or in the YouTube.
It's not family friendly, but Mike keeps bringing up this idea of tools going away, and I think it's also something we don't talk about enough on productivity.
Yeah,
we don't talk about end of life, and we don't talk about acquisition. And to me, I think if your first thought isn't to understand you're shaped by the tool, and your second thought isn't to understand that, okay, if that's true, then I need to make sure what I value is in the tool. Your third thought needs to be then, like we're doing steps in the show. How do I get myself out of the tool?
Yeah.
Right. Data portability, just had Evernote CEO on. Data portability has been a huge factor in so many tools until recently. Now it's not really that kind of, or it's a paid feature. The minute you have to pay to export your life, you're on the wrong tool.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good quote. For like, say, my situation, maybe we can do a bit of like a analysis on me.
Yes.
Because like I'm like working out how I can do things better. Like, but I know that I guess I'd say I'm about 60 to 70% what I'm happy with. But I would say 30% I'm saying not happy. For example, 70% of my time I'm happy at how I spend it, but 30%, like Chris does with the Palm, phone Palm thing.
Phone readings.
Phone reading, that's it. Like I do notice that I do sometimes overspend my time on certain things and put my attention elsewhere. What can say I do? It's maybe like an example as well for people watching. Maybe you can like sort of probe me.
Do you need to be productive 100% of the time?
No.
Okay, so if you're looking at, you're saying you're 70% happy, right? That's pretty good. I would say, like, I mean, where, again, to Chris's point, and I mean, I'll definitely shift over to Chris here in a second, but it's not about like, I'm not like there's 30%. Well, what do you like? Why? What do you value? Like, why do you want to get? And you even said, I want to get better. Why? What are the things that you like? Those are the questions that take time and introspection. And you've got to let all the other things. You might have to let some of the other like smaller things go to like the little dopamine hits you'll get from checking off boxes to going, oh look, you're gonna have to think about that first, I think, and then I'll Chris, you go, because I mean I have a lot of thoughts on this, but Chris, like, what do you think?
I was gonna say it's almost as if that question was perfect for you and your time crafting.
There are a lot of things that I could think about, but I want you to shift in here.
Right? No, I think Francesca, what you said with that around specifically 70% was so telling. Because if you look at, just from a scientific standpoint, when you're dealing with population well-being, that's kind of the number we look for. So that you've got 70% till something goes well, then you've got 100% when something's not going well. When between 70 and 100, you've got 30 full percent, right? So 10% is always going to be bad. It's just the way life is. But that 20% between 70 and that 90, that's really where we travel up and back, up and back. Like the journey between life's okay and life is hell is in that 20%. So I think the fact you're there is a really good sign. My only advice to you is, start to encourage yourself to have 10% bad time where you're just not happy. Because the suffering you're feeling is not that you're not succeeding, it's that you're not accepting failure. And failure is part of success. It's the part of the cycle. Right. So scheduling, a small part of your day, if it's time blocking, again, I don't want to get into all the things that Mike knows so well, but to me, I have to have a certain amount of letdowns and a certain amount of relationships that gone bad and a certain amount of spending that's just not healthy. It's just the way we function, and you need to schedule for it. You need to plan for it.
Yeah. Humans, what is it? Buddha says, like, human life is suffering. There is some suffering. There's some struggle that you're going to have, and that's just part of it. I think that you need to look at probably what I would start with is again, that 20%, is that, like, start big. What areas of life is it not working for you? And if that's,
I literally want to ask him the question. Like, okay, let's just say 10%, Francesco, is going to be bad. 10% is always going to be bad. Love it, because the alternative sucks to not having any bad. Then what's the 20%? What's the 20% that makes you uncomfortable?
I think it probably goes back to the fact that you think you should be good all the time, to some extent. So I guess some of that is that, but I guess, like, the fact that I maybe, like, I don't know, like, I overthink things sometimes in certain situations. So I guess, like, I'll pick a certain thing, like at the start, just for example, at the start of the pandemic, I was actually really worried, but it's not in my control, I know that, but I was just really worried about the situation. And at the time, I tried to productivity-ify it. So I would go and try and plan in and try and organize, like, what finances would look like, obviously some stuff you have to do, but it would be worrying to some extent, because I was worrying about something I'm not able to control. So I guess that's probably an example of some of the situations that sort of pop up, if that makes sense.
You can engineer a certain amount of certainty, but you can't engineer all certainty. Because, I think we need both uncertainty and certainty in our lives anyways. Like, humans need both of those things. You need to be able to have some harmony between the two, for sure. But I came across this problem too. I actually, anxiety definitely takes hold in situations where it's like, I don't have control and things are very different. How do I create some control measurements? How do I do that? And that's, and as productivity people, if we're going to use that, I'll just use that term. It's like, okay, what can I create triggers for or activators for, so that I know that I'm getting some stuff done? Because our default is, if I'm taking action, then that means I'm doing something, and something is better than nothing. But that's not always the case if the something you're doing is not worthwhile. If it's you're wasting or squandering, not wasting, because it's okay to waste. It's squandering time, like literally just going, okay. So this is where, like, if it's exercise, like for me, I'll use myself as an example. I was struggling, like, during especially the initial parts of the pandemic. Fitness was something I'm like, I'm gaining weight. I am not doing well with this. I need to create some kind of thing that I will follow. So I ate my own dog food and said, I'm going to create a time of day where I will focus on fitness, and and it's not like I just did it and then said, okay, that's when it's happening. Or I didn't just add it to Todoist and say, well, work out every day, because my brain would go, nah, I'm not ready for that. Nah, I don't have time. Like, all those biases would show up. So I had to step back and go, okay, I need to go into Woven, and I need to make sure that I can't be booked during these times. Like, that's where the tools can help me, because then I don't have to think about it. I can go, okay, well, I know that there's no excuse. My day ends at 3:30. 4 o'clock is when I'm scheduled to work out. I'll get a notification that I set up that says, hey, it's time to think it's, are you going to work out now? And it's not go do yoga or go lift weights. It's called movement mode. Like that's what it is. So it gives me some flexibility inside of that to decide what that is, right? Because if I was too narrow with it, if I was saying, hey, I'm going to go lift weights, and my body says, oh, my shoulder hurts, I can't really, okay, I guess I'm not going to work out, right? Like your brain, there's those two parts of your brain we know, the amygdala and then the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala just wants to like, how can I just survive? Like, how can I just, it's the part that's okay with the 30 and would be more than happy to have it flipped 70-30 the other way. It's the higher reasoning part that goes, no. I want to live to see grandchildren. I want to be able to, like those kind, which sometimes that comes to mind, right? So I'm like, I need to get in better shape. I want to be fit. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I know I want to get my energy levels back up. Exercise has proven to do that. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this there. And then I'm going to see how that works. I'm not going to say, okay, this is how it's going to work forever and ever. Amen. Because we know that's not the case. I'm going to just create this thing here to see how this works, because if it doesn't work, then I may have to try something else. And that's kind of like, that's an example. And then I made a consistent effort to remembering why I valued it, back to why do I value being in shape? This is why. So this is why this time is invested in this, as opposed to, going, well, I just hope it happens. I know it has to happen. And then looking in the mirror every day and going, you know what? I'm not really looking that good. Oh, well, I don't have time, which is a load of crap. It's just you decided, okay, that's not where I want to spend my time. So if that, being a better parent, things like that, like whatever work stuff, whatever it is that you can craft your time to do that. But but don't try, number one, to do it all at once. That's one of the biggest problems with most productivity systems. And frankly, tools in a lot of cases can do this too. You have to do it all now. And then your brain goes, no. Like, either subconsciously or consciously, you pull back, right? So just pick one. Like, I'm going to try to quit soda pop. I'm going to try to meditate. And don't do like all five, because if they all start falling up, one starts falling apart, then they all start to, right? So the brain is a tricky beast that we need to kind of think and make sure we give it the supports it needs so that it can do the things that will get us that, in your case, that 20% more often than not.
I think coming back to the tools part, I think like it's probably sometimes a case that like the systems and the good sort of foundations that are taught to us at the start of productivity aren't always there for some people when they just download the tool. When they just download the tool, like they're just going into it and then they don't have a foundation. So maybe that's where they're sort of getting a bit, they move around a lot, and they also potentially get a bit stuck with this.
Or there's a template there that doesn't fit them. So then they like Todoist, when you download Todoist the first time, it's got here's this, and like the shopping project. I'm like, it's a project. I'm like, I don't like that list. That's shopping is ongoing. I would rather have that be a label. Like, so people, the tools are designed for the masses, not for the individual. And then people go, oh man, there's so much here. How do I fit? I don't have time to fix this. I'm just going to go back to the way I used to do things. Right. That's what happens. Or they use the tool in a way that the tool wants you to use it, which is, again, not crapping on tools, but Chris, you've spent time in software. You know this stuff, right? So, it's what the tool is designed to say, okay, we need people to use this tool in like en masse. This is what en masse would look like. Yeah, I know you want to personalize that. That's going to take time. And that's where someone has to decide if they're going to take the time to set it up or not, which is what you do with Keep Productive. You help people with that part, which is so valuable.
I'd like to share one more time something with you guys on my screen. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So is my screen shown?
Yep.
Yes.
So again, my whole system I built on another table. The very first table I built was my values table. And my values table was just for me and my family to organize what's important, whether it's a task we're working on or a goal. But more than that, like, what are the pieces that are attached to that? So, we all have work to do every day, but what are the goals to do with work? What are the projects you have? What are the tasks you have to do with work? What are the interactions when someone contacts you about work? What are the guardrails for this particular to value, but more importantly, what are the bills that actually allow you to do work? So there's that. And what that allowed me to do is then include my family. So we have weekly kind of meetings. So we look at this is for my husband and I, we look at our values, and once a week, we sit down and we write down the things that we felt last week, looking back, were good around our values. These aren't task lists, these are feelings. And then we think about next week, what are the things we would like to feel in those areas, right? And I think it's really important that, until you sit down and whatever tool you use and you define what it is, Mike calls it time blocking, I call it values, and then how those values connect to everything else you have, and then do a review. And it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of effort, and no one wants to be pinned down, but values are kind of the operating system for the 70% that got you to this point.
What I liked about that is that you have intentions listed there, not actions. Because action without intention is empty calories. Intention then to action, that's like, okay, this is what I intended to do. Therefore, this is the action I'm going to take. But a lot of people have it backwards. Like, here's the action I'm going to take. Oops.
Well,
that's not my intention.
That was on purpose. See, my husband doesn't do well with productivity. He doesn't do well with tools. He doesn't do well with checklists.
Wife. Yes.
He does a really good job with feelings backward and feelings forward, which are reflections and intentions.
Mm-hmm. My wife's the same.
Migrating someone from tasks to, reflections and intentions was a, I hate to say it, but it was the only route to go.
Well, and I'm the same. I mean, I've asked my wife, hey, we should have a to-do. She goes, what? Like she uses a paper list. And she's a pretty damn productive person. If you were to break it, she gets a lot. I'm like, okay. And I look at that and I go, oh, like she's getting her workouts in every day, and she's doing all these things that really matter. Like everything that my wife does every single day matters. And I'm like, and so when you look at it through that lens, you're like, okay, but she's not using all these tools. What? Like, so it's very, but yet we will sit down and have like a weekly, like much like yours, not to the same degree, not to the same level, but we'll sit down and have a meeting. We'll talk about food, finance, and family. Like what are we going to cook this? What's our meal plan look like? Because why are we doing that? Well, we want to have healthy meals for our kids, but we also want to save money. We don't want to be eating out every day or whatever, because life is busy, right? Like there's a lot going on. We talk about finance because we don't want to, especially right now, we're like, where's the money going? What are our getting that attuned, right? And then also family stuff. Like we went swimming last Friday night they've opened up the public pools here for small groups. And my wife's like, we should go. I want to go swimming. I want to get the kids out. I'm like, great, let's do that. That was something we planned. And I know a lot of people go, oh yeah, but plans. Yeah, look, there's this quote that says, I think it was Eisenhower said, when going into battle, I find planning to be useful, but plans useless. And I think that if you go in with a plan, you can make adjustments. But I think a lot of what happens is people don't take the time to sit down and make that happen. So then the wind kind of takes them to where they want. Or if they don't have an intentional set of actions or tasks, then they're just going to go, you're just going to go wherever your values, right. They're going to go wherever. Yes, they're going to go wherever that takes them, which may not be in the direction that they want to go.
I think though that's something that I did I set myself some goals like 5 years ago, but I never did the value side of stuff. And I probably, based on this conversation, I probably should. Because I don't actually have a sort of not a roadmap, but how do you say it? Like a one-pager sort of, explaining where it should be going.
And it's okay to call it that. I think a lot of people also get kind of caught up in I'm not going to turn my life into a product. You don't have to. The world does that for you. What you do have to do is turn your life into a manifesto for what you value. Right. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with putting your values on. I mean, some people use religion for this. Some people use all sorts of things. But the other thing I love about starting with values and not productivity is it doesn't matter if you've got all the resources in the world or none of them. Your values will always be your values.
Yep. Yeah. And the other thing is when you look at what Chris put together, don't go, oh my God, that's how I have to do it. No. I mean, and also I would imagine.
Don't.
Yeah.
It almost killed my marriage.
But I also imagine, Chris, you didn't just do that in one day either. You didn't like it was an evolutionary process. You have to be okay with that, right? You have to be. It's same thing with taking on a new tool or you have to be okay with where you start and not be like, oh, I'm not where Chris is at, or I'm not where Francesco's at, or I'm not where Mike's at. Start where you are at. And I mean, one of the things that I want to just share before I know we're close to wrapping up, is there's a reason I put in Todoist, like put up Christmas lights. And it's not because I don't want to forget to put up the Christmas lights. It's because my kids really love Christmas lights going up. I love my kids. I don't want to have to think about it. I don't want to forget it. That's why it's there. And there's so many people go, well, wouldn't you just do it? I'm like, no, I would probably do it, but it would be because I'm driving down the street and I see someone with their holiday lights up and I go, oh, I guess I should do that soon. I don't want that to be the determining factor. I want it to be like, I don't want to have to think about it. I know why I'm doing it. That's why it's there. And then Todoist tells me, like, that's what Todoist is supposed to do for me. It's supposed to say, hey, today's the day that you said that you wanted to think, and it's actually not put up Christmas lights. It's like, decide when you want to put up the Christmas lights. It's not even like do it. It's like, this is now the time that you would normally, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it this day, and now I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to make it a kid activity, and then we do it all as a family. That's why. So to values, that's why that's there. Not because, it's a mundane task and I want all the mundane tasks in Todoist. That's not why mundane tasks are in there. That's not at all why they're in there. So, and that's also why I don't have like 50,000 different types of filters in Todoist. My filters are incredibly simple because that's all I need them to do. And so, again, I personalized it over time. It didn't happen like that. It happened as I figured out how to make the tool adhere to the values that I wanted to espouse in my daily life. That's as that happened. And the tool will change the value. Like Chris was saying, values are going to be there. It's how you leverage the tool, whatever tool it is, to help you take action on those intentions or those values, right?
Yeah, sort of like.
And in closing,
sorry, Chris.
That's okay. No, I was just going to say, and in closing, because I know we're getting close to the half too, I just want us to get this out. You know, you look at your tools. Like, again, we are, you can judge a person by their tools 100%. The second thing is, to Mike's point about, like, don't worry about if you're not where I am, or you're not where Mike is, you're not where Francesco is. Ask for help. There is no one in the Keep Productive community, and there's no one I've seen online who wouldn't help you. I see people every day on the Facebook group ask for help. I offer help all the time. My phone number is on my website. I get phone calls from strangers daily. I value, if you read my values, go back and screenshot and look at them, service. It is my ultimate value. So ask for help. And more importantly, if you have anything, give help. It's never been more important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that was really useful. I unexpectedly, not that I didn't think we'd find use in it. I mean, like, I found a lot more use than I thought I would. Where can people find you guys afterwards if they're looking to sort of reach out? Obviously, phone number. Great.
We're both in the community, right? We egg us there. I mean, that's like, but I mean, I'm productivityist.com and I'm at productivityist on social platforms and all that stuff, but I'm in the community. So if you want to tag me in the Facebook community, I'll respond. Just like Chris was saying, I'm happy to help out.
I've definitely
you can find me anywhere as because I always tell people, you can't remember my name, just Google Most Connected. But again, seriously, I mean, do reach out if any of this video resonated with you, especially now. So many people are afraid. So many people are anxious, and it's okay. You're not alone. Every single one of us today, Francesco, myself, and Mike, have all felt terrified and still feel terrified daily. We're here for you, and we'll be there for you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I definitely took a lot away, so I think people will. So thanks, guys, for coming on. This probably will be like we'll probably end up having like a couple of part series on like different topics, I think, because it's quite an interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to. I think that there's a lot we've we've talked a lot about a lot of really important things, and I think there's lots more to discuss.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll send you guys the actions on the email. No, I'm joking. But yeah, no, that was really fantastic. So thanks for coming on, guys.